Okay, part 3. Reading and parsing external data with FileIn dat plus convert dat. So what we have here is FileIn. We can read external documents. So I have something called things to do .text. We can see that here, assets. I think I have it in data. And so here we go. So it's, if you're bored, a list of things you can do. So we can read in that document. So it's just reading that right there. We could convert text to table automatically. That actually works. If every sort of return in the document, it could automatically turn that into a table. So we have separate cells for each line. Or we can just keep it the way it is. This convert dat, and sometimes like FileIn will do that. 'Cause really what we want things to be in is a table format. So we can parse things depending on which row or which column it is. Sometimes, like if you're not using FileIn dat, you're just using something else, you might not be able to easily convert it to a table like that. So we should know about convert dat. So convert is doing that. It's converting it from text to a table format. And in this case, it is splitting the cells. So this is, technically this is a tab key. But whenever there's a kind of return in the document, by default, this kind of does the same thing. So you can see it's splitting that up into a table, cells. So that looks good for us. Actually, I mean, we could get rid of that and just do like convert text to table, and that looks fine for us. Okay, great. So what I want to do is same thing as always. I'm selecting, getting an index, and in this case, I'm sending this string to a text SOP, and we could see this right here. So similar fashion to do a reference. We can't just drag that in. We need to write this out manually. So click text, click the little blue expression, operator null 5, which is this right here. And instead of typing a channel name like we do for chop reference, we do the row number, column number. So because of our select situation, we already got it down to a single row and column. So it's just 0, 0. One thing I didn't point out earlier was, if we did something like, let's do FileIn. Let's actually directly reference FileIn. And then let's say row, I don't know, 22. And there's only one column, so column 0. So there you go. So this number right here, we can change that. So it's not necessary to go through this select dat situation like what we have. The thing is, I find it easier. It's just a little bit more intuitive to have an operator right there, and its only job is to help select a specific row that we're going to convert to this text. If you do it here, sure, maybe you can use fewer operators, but then you'd have to do, like in here, we could do something like kind of a nested reference. So then null 6, and it's called chan1. Okay, and then that gives me an error. Okay, why is that an error? Because this part right here should be equal to 32, right? The thing is, even though this looks like an integer, if let's show this other part here. I can do up null 6 chan1. Let's see what this value is. So I'm opening up a text port here. This is a text dat. I can run script. Oops. Okay, I forgot one little line here. I want to print this. So text dat. So in addition to doing things like writing these little comments, You can type just a little line of code here and then add a little print statement, and it actually runs that. So we can check that if we go up to text port, so dialog text port. This is kind of like the console where print statements end up. So click that, right click, run. Okay, and there we go. So this is looking at null 6 chan 1, which is this right here. That looks like 32, just an integer to us. Actually, the way that chops store the values is as a float. So it actually is a float number, 32.0. So over here, when we we referenced FileIn 1, and so basically we're trying to get a row number here. We're looking at that same like optional 6 chan 1. We think it should say 32, which would give us row 32. It's actually saying 32.0, and so it's looking for a row number called 32.0, and row numbers are only integer. Adding like that little 0.0 as a float makes it crash. It doesn't know like, oh, there's no 0.0 for a row number. So that's why this says none, just to make us angry. So what we'd have to do in this case is convert this to an integer, like so. Like if that's like way down there. So let's make sure we can see this good stuff here. So I think you'll agree, doing it the way I was doing it initially with the select dats, it's just a little bit more easier on the eye. This is like, you know, a reference nested inside another little bit of Python, nested inside these brackets, referencing that. It's just kind of a little bit harder to wrap your brain around, I think. So I'm going to just keep it the way I did before. So we're just kind of going through. So select dat is doing the job of, you know, selecting a specific index, and then go to a null, and then all this has to do is just look at 0, 0 of that null, and it doesn't have to kind of sort through all that other stuff. So it was better the way it was before. We just went on a little journey. Null 5, 0, 0. There we go. Okay. Okay. And I got this little situation here. I've got an LFO, and I'm up to something here. Let's hit play. And you can see when I hit play, LFO is kind of going up and down. And this becomes one of these kind of like, you know, game show things where I'm going to hit ready, stop. Oh, and then it like keeps going for a minute. Because I've got a little bit too much overshoot on my lag, I think. Let's do like 0.5, 0.5, and make lag maybe 1 and 1. Okay, try it again. All right, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. And then hit stop on the LFO. Okay. Sing songs. Okay, that's what I have to do now. So this is working. So how do I know? I've changed this offset and amplitude, and this is just a lesson of knowing. A constant thing you have to think about is mapping parameters, the range that a parameter is expecting with the range of the number that you're actually generating. So what I want to do, I want this LFO to kind of cycle through all these rows, right? And how many rows do I have? I kind of read this in. We can kind of see it here, I think. Maybe not. It went away. Let's see. Because what I did with this first select, actually did not want my text file had this top line things to do. So I didn't want that to show up. So I got rid of that with this select. I just started at row 1 instead of 0. And then this other select is the one that's actually getting the single index. So I want to look at this operator to see how many rows does it have. And let's just see this really quick. I can just use a constant. And on value here, I can type in up, select 7, and it's not a parameter, it's an attribute. I just go dot num rows, spell it correctly. So there are 33 rows in here. Again, to find out magic words like that, num rows, like any sort of dat, this is goes across any dat operator. It's a universal thing for every table type of dat. We go in here, click on Python help, and it shows us a list of all the magic Python words. So there's 33 rows. For this index, remember, the first one is 0, so therefore the row index numbers will be 0 to 32. So I want my LFO to be giving me values from 0 to 32. And let's look at a trail here again. So by default, this triangle wave will go from -1 to +1. So let's just do it with a new LFO, just to kind of practice shaping our data here. So this is a sign. Let's do, doesn't matter. You could like play around with different shapes. So instead of -1 to +1, I want it to go from 0 to 32. So a couple ways we could do this. You know, I changed offset and amplitude. We could also just go into insert operator. We could do math and then go to range and then type in, okay, it is doing -1 to 1. I want it to go 0 to 32. And then voila, it's going in that range now. But I wanted to do it not manually, because what if I change this document, I add or I delete rows to this, then I have to come in here and I have to like change this number again. So what I want to do is have this be automatic. So that was in something called select 7, and it was number of rows. And I don't want this to go up to 33 because the index is 1 below that. So make sure we have -1 on that. Okay, so then now that's doing what I want it to do. So that's with the math, doing the range. It's really helpful. I could just do this directly in the LFO, what I did before. So if you notice here, so if I do offset, let's pretend like if offset is 20. So now amplitude is still 1, so now it's going up to 21, down to 19. So we can kind of understand, so offset is going to be the kind of middle point. If I want 0 to 32, right, that's going to be 16. Amplitude is also going to be 16. Now I have the values going from 0 up to 32. So to do this with a script, right, we see it kind of like this. I actually have a little mathematical operation happen here. So I have this right here, which is equaling the number 32, but I divide that by 2. And also, if I don't have these parentheses, I run into a problem. Because if you remember from your algebra class in junior high or whenever that was, whenever there is a multiplication or division, it takes precedence over this other thing. So what it's doing is it's doing this first, and then it's subtracting this number 33 minus 0.5 equals 32.5. And so we want this to be calculated first and then divided by 2. So that's how we get that. Okay, so that's the range that we want for this. Okay. So this is useful if you have, some external documents. It's good for like a collaborative thing. If you have, maybe you're grabbing some file from the internet or whatever. I could just write this out manually also if I had like a table, and I just create exact dimension, rows. Let's do 10 and 1, and then hit this, right? So I could just type these out myself in a table dat instead of having a text file somewhere. So whatever, it just depends. Whatever. It's the text file I think is really helpful for collaboration, for sharing things. Also, let's look at another FileIn. There's another type of thing over here. I've got more data. Let's look at animals. And so this is another text file with just some names of animals in it. And let's imagine, so in this case, the automatic convert text to table doesn't work because it's kind of looking for either a tab or a return in the document, which this one does not have. So we need to do something else. And let's just connect a convert right here. And so this is where we kind of need to be aware. So this by default splits cells at a tab. This is what this /t means. But we don't want to do that. We want to split. There's just like a space basically in between, right? So let's do this. Hit space. And we don't see anything there, but it's there. If I now click anywhere outside, there we go. So that split, wherever it saw a space character, splits these into separate columns. I could then kind of change this around where, this is selecting by rows. I have this all as columns. So I'd have to, shift that around a little bit. Or there's another DAT I could use called transpose. And there's not even any parameters. So all it does is it just kind of flips columns become rows and vice versa. So this is helpful. Just get rid of this so I could just go straight there. And now this is going to give me an error because this is the wrong number of rows for that. But to convert, like depending on whatever the input data is, however it's separated, the convert dat, you need to type that in right there. Like if I did something like the letter G. So that looks weird now, right? So every time there's a letter G, that actually creates a separated cell. So that's kind of weird. So probably wouldn't want to actually do that, but that's how it works.